Oh boy, here we go. Strap yourselves in. I have not received this many texts about our podcast on the day of the podcast, ever. It's a first. I don't know where Randy's going, but I'm just hoping his head is still attached to his shoulders when it's all said and done. Is it time to blow it up? Is it the players? Is it the front office? Is it both? Can it get any worse? How would it get any worse? Orioles and Royals were pretty much in the same spot in 14, pretty much in the same spot in 18. They're not in the same spot now. Trade market, who can the Royals trade? What teams would be interested in what the Royals have? And of course, Randy will wrap it all up with a big smile on his face. We call it the minor league minute. He'll find some joy somewhere, but I don't know. Do I need to take cover? It's time for the Kaufman Corner podcast.
You're listening to Kaufman Corner, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Royals, breaking down the Royals like no one else can. Kaufman Corner is hosted by Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro. Rany is a co-founder of Baseball Prospectus, author of Rany and the Royals, and former columnist for Grantland, The Ringer, and The Athletic. Soren is the award-winning afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Kaufman Corner is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Gann Asphalt and Concrete is now hiring for all positions: project manager, dump truck drivers, operators, and crew members. Starting pay up to $30 per hour based on experience, with paid time off and insurance, just to name a few of the benefits. Check out GannAsphalt.com for more info. Now, here's your hosts, Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro.
And good evening, even if it's not a good evening for the Kansas City Royals. Remember, if you're catching us via the podcast, we stream live Sunday nights, 10 p.m. Central. Usually it's Sunday night. Sometimes it bleeds over into a Monday. But you can catch us, be a part of the conversation in the chat room if you want to be with us. Again, 10 p. Central. We stream live, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, everything we can think of. If you got any suggestions, we'll take them. Don't know that we can do it, but we'll listen to it. It has been a tough week for the Royals. Swept by the Marlins, a rebuilding team. Swept now by the Baltimore Orioles, a rebuilding team. Teams that should have been really the measuring stick for the Royals, and there's not much to measure. Randy, you've been boiling about this all day, my friend. Where do you want to go from here?
There are times that I envy you, Soren, for having your own sports talk show on 810 WHB. I don't envy you for the fame and fortune that comes with being a sports radio host, the rock star lifestyle, the drugs, right, and the women. No. I envy you for the fact that every day, 5 days a week, you get to speak into a microphone for several hours and tell thousands of attentive listeners exactly how you feel about the local sports teams. Mm-hmm. You get to speak your mind. You get to empty your heart. You get to summon fire and brimstone, if not from the heavens, then from the airwaves. You get to tell it like it is. I don't have a daily radio show. I only have Kaufman Corner, this humble, but dare I say, highly rated podcast with a devoted and rapidly growing fan base, replete with the most savvy, erudite, and dare I say, attractive listeners around. Not to mention advertisers that sell world-class products that everyone should buy. And so once a week, I don't have to envy you, Soren. I get to be you. I get to tap into a vein and share my feelings with the world. I get to tell it like it is. And tonight, here are 4 words I get to share with a worldwide audience. Burn it all down. I would like to tell you that today, June 11th, 2023, that the Royals hit rock bottom. They are 18-47. They are on pace to lose 117 games. It is mid-June, and they have yet to win 3 games in a row. They have yet to have a winning week. They have yet to have a 500 week. But I can't tell you that this is rock bottom. Buddy Bell did not sacrifice 3 years of his life and any hope of getting another manager's job again so that we would fail to heed his words, "I never say it can't get worse." If it were not possible to get any worse, then it wouldn't have gotten worse than it was last week, when the Royals were 18-41 and already off to one of the worst starts in the ignoble history of the franchise. But then they went out and got swept twice. They were outscored this week 41-14. Do you know how hard it is to have your opponents triple you up for an entire week? And now they're 18-47. How bad is that? The 1988 Baltimore Orioles, who you remember famously started the season 0-21, the team synonymous with the phrase the worst start in baseball history, were also 18-47. The team that had the biggest faceplant at the starting line in Major League history is now even with the Royals. Only 5 teams in the divisional era have had a worse record after 65 games than these Royals. One of those teams is, of course, this year's Oakland A's, who are as bad as they are for a simple reason. They want to be. They are determined to be bad. Their owner, John Fisher, has gone full Rachel Phelps on Oakland, violating one of the cardinal rules of baseball. You never go the full Rachel Phelps. He has driven his franchise into the ground on purpose so that he can move the team to Las Vegas. His team isn't winning because he doesn't want them to win. Winning violates his principles. And even the Oakland A's have won 5 games in a row. Because baseball is such an unpredictable sport that even the most terrible teams win 5 games in a row, unless they are the Kansas City Royals, who can't win 3 games in a row. The A's, using every trick up their sleeve to make their team as odious as possible, are now just 1 win behind the Kansas City Royals, who have been building to this season for at least the last 5 years. I know a lot of people understandably find it difficult to believe that the Royals could possibly be this bad by accident. So they must be this bad on purpose. They must be tanking. And this sentiment hasn't sat right with me, and I think I figured out how to express why. It's because tanking is at its core a stalling tactic. It's a way for teams to pass the time when it knows that it has no chance to compete, to use that time wisely by sifting through the bargain bin, giving opportunities to players who have been overlooked, by trading every player of value that it can for future prospects, by garnering the highest possible draft slot, and even, yes, to save millions of dollars in payroll. But ultimately, tanking is a tool teams use while they wait for the cavalry to arrive. And this is why I don't think we can give the Royals a pass by claiming that they're tanking. They're not waiting for the cavalry to arrive. After 5 years of waiting, the cavalry has arrived. And they're riding donkeys. They're here, but they brought the wrong kind of ammunition for their guns, and their bayonets have rusted. The wave of talent that years of terrible baseball in 2018 and 2019 and 2020 and 2021 and 2022 was supposed to bring us, it's here. It's on the field every day. It's playing, and it's losing. Think about all the players that we were excited to see debut last season. Bobby Witt, MJ Melendez, Vinny Pasquantino, Nick Pratto, Michael Massey, Drew Waters. When spring training opened, all 6 of those players were expected to be in the starting lineup. And in the rotation, we had Brady Singer, Daniel Lynch, and Chris Bubich, freed from the clutches of Cal Eldred, who were supposed to make up 3/5 of the rotation. All 9 of those players were drafted between 2017 and 2019. This was supposed to be the wave of talent that the Royals forgot to follow up their World Series teams with. From 2011 through 2016, the Royals only signed 3 players who have managed even 5 wins above replacement in the majors: Sean Manaea, Jacob Junis, and Matt Strahm. But finally, starting with Prado and Melendez in 2017, they were getting it right. This was supposed to be the year they proved it. This was supposed to be the year those players established themselves as major league caliber players. That doesn't mean the Royals had to contend. A lot of young teams struggle a little while getting their feet wet. But struggle means 71 and 91. Maybe it means 68 and 94. It doesn't mean 18 and 47. The Royals would literally have to play above 500 the rest of the season just to finish 68 and 94. I'm going to predict they won't, because they're just not good enough. Because this wave of talent simply isn't good enough. Which is scary, because that wave may have crested after 2019. This week, Baseball America made official what we already knew, releasing a new top 100 prospect list that dumped Gavin Cross from the rankings, which means that from 2020 to 2022, The Royals drafted 4th, 7th, and 9th. And none of the 3 guys they picked, Asa Lacy, Frank Mazzucato, and Gavin Cross, are top 100 prospects today. Neither is anyone else in the organization. The tsunami of talent turned out to be a ripple in the ocean, and now the tide is pulling back. And I'm pissed off. But I'm mainly pissed off at myself for talking myself into believing that one man was so responsible for the embarrassment that the Royals had become last season that firing him, along with the manager and the pitching coach, was sufficient to turn things around. I said to myself, and I said to you on this podcast for much of the fall and the winter, that surely J.J. Picollo would replace Dayton Moore with some new voices from outside the organization, some new perspectives, and give them the authority to make some real changes. And then I convinced myself that a new manager and a new pitching coach would be those voices. And I kind of blinded myself to the reality, which is that no one actually replaced Dayton Moore in the front office. No one else in the front office seemed to have lost their jobs, which means that the same men who have been in charge of the Kansas City Royals since 2006, which is so long ago that Taylor Swift hadn't released her first ever single yet, are still in charge, sans one person. That kind of stasis would be intolerable in a winning organization. Take a look at all the people who have come and gone with the Rays or the Astros or the Dodgers or the Braves or the Guardians. But in an organization that has 3 winning seasons in 17 years and is on pace for its 3rd 100-loss season in 6 years, Dayton Moore's gone, and maybe he took all the bad with him. Maybe the man who was an assistant GM for 15 years was completely blameless. Maybe the man who was overseeing the last 12 drafts was overruled by Dayton Moore in literally every one of his botched first-round picks. Maybe all the other guys in the front office who haven't worked for another organization since before the Marvel Cinematic Universe existed are really on the cutting edge of baseball and were simply held back by their former boss. But I don't think so. Because if J.J. Picollo and Lonnie Goldberg and everyone else in the front office combined are only 30% responsible for this mess, only 20% responsible, that is still enough of a mess that I don't know that they deserve the right to get to clean it up. It's true that Picollo has only had one offseason to be completely his own man. And yeah, he did sign Aroldis Chapman. Good for him. He also managed to sign Jordan Lyles to a 2-year, $17 million contract, which should by itself be disqualifying. I know that a segment of the fan base is upset with John Sherman for saying that the Royals were about to have a, quote, major signing that turned out to be Jordan Lyles. But can you blame him? He gave his GM the green light to sign a free agent to a multi-year contract that consumes 10% of the payroll. The problem isn't what Sherman said, it's what Picollo did. Picollo also gave Franmil Reyes a guaranteed contract to play so badly that he was released a month into the season and found a way to get Jackie Bradley Jr. in his 133 batting average onto the roster. So when I say burn it all down, I'm not just talking about the players. You could trade everyone on the roster. But frankly, who would want half of these guys in the first place? We need to stop complaining about the players. The players aren't really the problem. Matt Quatraro and Brian Sweeney and Alex Zumwalt aren't really the problem. We have to look elsewhere. I mentioned before that only 5 teams in the divisional era have had a worse start than the 2023 Royals. One of them, of course, was also a Royals team. Specifically, the 2006 Royals that started 17-48. And do you know what the owner of the Royals did after that start? He burned it all down. He set the Royals down a long, meandering, but ultimately successful path towards building a championship ball club. It may be time to repeat the circle of life and start over yet again. I do not mean that John Sherman should repeat what David Glass did in 2006 and fire his GM 1 week before the draft. His front office made this bed they ought to sleep in it, at least through the trading deadline. But if I'm John Sherman, I'm looking for alternatives now. I'm looking to do what Clark Hunt did after the Chiefs' 2012 season. I'm looking for my Andy Reid, and I'm not letting him get off the plane until he accepts the job. I'm burning it all down, and I'm starting over from scratch.
Yeah, I mean, well said. I will disagree, and I'll continue to disagree respectfully because I do understand the frustration.
And that is absolutely fine, and you should disagree. That's why this show exists. We need to have some conflict,
right? So, I think once you start down the road, whether it's good or bad or right or wrong. First of all, John Sherman needed to understand that if you put J.J. Picollo in place, that with it comes, if there's not immediate success, this will be the response, that nothing has really changed. Even though 3 top positions were changed, Dayton Moore, whatever the dynamics were of his control over J.J. Picollo, we know he was still J.J. Picollo's boss. Mike Matheny is the manager. Cal Eldred is the pitching coach, moves, Cal Eldred, long overdue and getting done. It was a tactical mistake. I'll say that, because if I don't think you could have possibly thought it was going to be this bad, because if you thought it was going to be this bad, you'd have known the PR position you're in and the frustration that you're feeling and other Royals fans are feeling would not be a good environment to try to get hundreds of millions of dollars for the vision of what you think a new ballpark district and a new ballpark should be.
Exactly.
So I think we can say this isn't what they thought it was going to be. How did J.J. Picollo shape what the season would be? I don't know. How much should John Sherman have been able to see through or be able to envision it himself? I don't know. I mean, you and I both picked the team to win 77 games. So, we think we're fairly knowledgeable about baseball. But I will just simply, and I won't take a lot of time to say it because people have heard me say it, and I think you speak for the vast majority of people. The vast majority. I will be greatly outnumbered. More so than perhaps, dare I say, understanding the logic behind Jordan Lyles signing. Even this, I will be more on the wrong side of the masses. But you just can't fix it as a general manager in one off season, especially an off season that you spent so much time looking to fill those three positions. Now, I will tell you, it seemed to take a while, but when did he get the green light? If you're a general manager and you have the job, and in June, okay, I'm going to be making some changes, you can get your list together. If you don't get that job, if you don't know that you get to do it until you get to September, I don't know how quickly you can put that list together. I don't know how quickly you can put all of it together. This is a monumental trade deadline that's coming up. And J.J. Picollo does not have the court of public opinion on his side. I think, like I said, 85, 90% are like you. Burn it all down and start with him. It looks worse now than it did when he took the job. He's going to get the trade deadline. You agree? He's got probably a 3 or 4 year contract. I don't think they'll walk going into the second year of it, but I think he's going to get to the end of the season. I don't know that everybody in the front office will. I think that's going to be something else. I think J.J. Picollo, whether it's to one, quote unquote, save his own hide, whether it's to throw some meat at the masses to calm the lions that are at the door, they're going to have to fire somebody. Like, somebody has to pay with their job. And if J.J. Picollo can't identify and sell ownership on the fact that these are the places we need to change. And again, maybe they've already been identified. Somebody said in there, we've had so many comments. We got a lot of people on the pod tonight that are with us live, that they said, what was it now? I lost my train of thought. Well, anyway, even, JJ's gonna have to fire somebody, right? Whoever it might be. And I think if he comes to the conclusion that no one needs to be fired, then I think that's a really hard sell. And I think you're going to have to say, look, this is what went wrong. This is where we need to go. I know my point was, I'm not so sure that everyone said, well, I don't know. Why aren't you firing guys now? Or what's the point of waiting till after? The point of waiting till after the draft is you're negotiating contracts with players and players' families. So the scouts that are out there, even if you've decided this is not where we need to go, bringing a new guy in, calling up mom and dad, where we know that, getting guys to sign is part of, do we draft him or do we not draft him? Do we think we can sign him? Do we not think we can sign him? Do we have a number that they're willing to sign for? And uprooting all those guys right now, that's not when you do it. Listen, it's a cutthroat business in the NFL. Right after the draft is when scouts get fired, and they don't have a shot to get hired until a year later, because pretty much usually everybody already has the replacements in mind, and I would think that would be the case. After the draft is the first opportunity for J.J. Picollo to show that there is change. If there are massive changes within the front office, that would signal that he's had that planned for quite some time. This was just the time to do it. And then the trade deadline. Are they going to be proactive? I think the only way that J.J. Picollo can stay is, I do think at some point they've got to make it either crystal clear in the moves that they make, or they've got to give an inkling with the moves that they make. And then he's got to publicly say, we know it's worse than maybe we thought it was, and we are basically at ground zero. I mean, I think you either show you're at ground zero, you trade. How do you do that? You trade Salvador Perez, right? You even have some kind of deal. MJ Melendez goes, any one of the young guys, go in a deal that brings you some other young guy where you show that we have a vision for what this team should look like. That guy wasn't it. This guy is, and we're going to make that deal. The transactional has got its opportunity to really showcase itself at the trade deadline and then very much in the offseason. And without a lot of activity, I think it's going to be very, very difficult. And the Baltimore Orioles, by the way, were the biggest, I think, billboard you could have for the fact that change has to come and that they have had more changes. By the way, we're brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, great Kansas City company. Growing quickly, they're hiring for all positions, project manager, dump truck drivers, operators, crew members, starting pay up to $30 per hour based upon your experience. Pay time off, yep. Insurance, yes. Just a couple of the benefits you can get. You can check out GannAsphalt.com for more information. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Rany, what would come first? What is burning it down? Again, do you the general manager goes now, or you let him continue to make moves all the way to the offseason and then you make a change? Or could he make enough moves at the trade deadline and after with front office changes that you would say, okay, wait a minute, we need to see how this plays out?
I think, if I'm the owner, if I'm the one in charge here, my decision on that really comes down to whether or not JJ Picollo can demonstrate to me that he has not just a vision or a plan for changing things around, but like that he can prove they're doing things differently. They're making better decisions. Like what you just said, JJ needs to come out and say we are at ground zero. That to me is not sufficient if you don't then say, here is how we are going to do things differently than the way we've been doing it for the last 15 years that got us to ground zero in the first place. I mean, we're kind of in uncharted territory here in terms of an organization that has had a front office in place for this long and has this level of losing. I don't know if I don't know if I can think of a sports organization that is this bad and has had the same people in charge for this long that didn't make a change, wholesale change. So it's like, can you teach an old dog new tricks?
Elgin Baylor and the Clippers.
Okay, and how did that go?
not well. I mean,
you know what I'm saying? Like that's my point. It's like every now and then you'll see that.
I do. I mean, don't you think it's unfair to say the same guy in charge? He's not Dayton Moore.
He's not, but it's like if he's not entirely he's not Soren Petro either. He's not somebody who came. If they had hired somebody from outside the organization in August to take the job and he made the same decisions and signed Jordan Lyles and the team was this bad, I would not be like, oh, you got to get rid of this guy, because at least I could say he had 0% blame for everything that happened before. Picollo has some blame. Like, yes, Dayton Moore, but like that's the thing. I think we've made Dayton Moore into the boogeyman, and it's like it wasn't just him. I mean,
I mean, I'll say welcome to the party, because when everybody's always trying to fire Dayton Moore, what did I tell you? Firing Dayton Moore does not wave a wand and solve it all. I mean, I said that about when you fire Howard Baird. That does not wave a wand and solve it all. Now, there were ownership issues, and Dayton Moore really, by turning the job down, I'm told 3 times, because they weren't willing to do what he said it takes to win.
Right.
Spending money in Latin America, spending over slot in the draft, maneuvering in the draft, all these things. The Glass family was forced to change. This is different.
It is different. I don't think. I mean, I'd like to see ownership spend more money on payroll, but at least in terms of player development, which is the core issue of this team, they're spending as much as everyone else because the rules have changed, and now basically every team has got a budget, and every team spends that budget. It's very rare to not spend all your money. They're spending the money. The ownership is letting them spend it, just spending it very, very, very poorly. And that's my point: is how much. You just said you've been saying to people for years, firing Dayton Moore is not going to be a magic wand. Well, then, what would be the magic wand? Maybe firing Dayton Moore and everyone else, and we're starting completely from scratch. Yeah, it's going to take a few years to rebuild from that, but it's going to be a few years anyway. I don't want to be in this position 4 or 5 years from now where we're starting over a third time because we finally are moving on from this front office.
Yes, and that's listen, we've had a lot of comments. There's been a lot of good ones up there. People saying things like, if you trade the young guys now, you're trading them at a low watermark. So what do you want to do? Stay the course? right? Those are the only assets. Randy's made a great point. Like, they don't have they can't go just splash a ton of cash around and sign 16-year-old kids in Latin America for over $1 million and say, okay, I wish they could. I wish they would. I wish you had an overall budget for, if we had a salary cap, that could be part of it. And you could the Mets could spend $300 million at the big league level, and the Royals could spend 50 and then put $250 million into player acquisition. It doesn't work that way.
Well, and I wish the fact that they were as bad as they are would at least guarantee them a top 2 pick and all the extra slot money that they could use in the draft. But after 55 years of the draft working that way, you can't rely on that, which sucks for the Royals now. It's good for the sport because you don't want teams to want to be this bad, but like it removes even that incentive.
It removes no incentive. I mean, this is what until you either go to relegation or do away with worst picking first. It does not.
I would be fine with that.
Harder and longer in the tanking process, but it does not remove the incentive. The incentive is the same. More resources is the best way to get there. Now, there are other resources beyond draft picks, but it doesn't.
Maybe it doesn't remove the incentive, but it certainly removes the guarantee. Like the Royals could be like they are this year, where they had a terrible year last year and have a lower draft position and less draft money than the Minnesota Twins, who finished 10 games ahead of them.
Yeah, I'm not, listen, we do the referendum on tanking all the time. It's real. It's there. It should be used. It should be embraced. And the reason it should be embraced is because the Royals didn't do it. And here they sit worse than the teams who did. And one of the teams who did is the Baltimore Orioles. They tanked. They traded Manny Machado. They traded Jorge Lopez. They traded, who was the other one we were going through? Curtis put together how the Orioles were built last week. And there was another, Dylan Bundy, all of which have players that came in return that are part of this Baltimore Orioles team.
They also hired a general manager from an analytics savvy organization. I'm just saying they're not mutually exclusive. You can do both.
Okay, then keep Salvi for the rest of your life. Because
I'm not arguing to do that. I'm saying do that.
So let me finish the point. And that is the Baltimore Orioles tanked. And they moved their major pieces. The Royals had Danny Duffy, Whit Merrifield, and Salvador Perez. 3 comparable pieces, right? When you add it up, Dylan Bundy was never that good. Jorge Lopez was not that good. And what do the Royals have to show for those 3 pieces that they could have traded back then? They don't have 4 guys that are on their big league roster on a team that's barreling towards more than 100 wins right now on pace. They have nothing from Danny Duffy. They have the most minimal return they could possibly get from Whit Merrifield. And they have Salvador Perez playing what is probably, based upon the math, one of his last really productive years and decreasing in value. Had they moved those players, people would have labeled it as tanking and they would have more young players in the system. Now, I agree with what everybody says. If you can't make a good trade, you can't make a good trade. But they don't make trades. They don't make real trades where they actually trade something of value. They never do. It's always some rent-a-player thing for some fringy 24-year-old guy in AA. It's never trading real value. They have whiffed on it. Call it whatever you want. It's like global warming. People tell me it's a cold day today, so global warming doesn't exist. Call it climate change. Call it asset relocation. I don't give a shit what you want to call it, okay? The bottom line is you have to move assets to get assets. They're not going to give you talented players by sitting around and firing your manager. So you can fire Quatrero, you can fire J.J. Picollo. The new guy's going to have to come in, and he's going to have to trade somebody. They're here still in this because they never actually embraced what it was. We suck. It's going to get worse. And the only way we can get out the other end faster is to embrace the suck. Understand that there are no expectations. We don't have to try to get into a wild card. We're not good enough. And then move everything that has any value for younger guys. And I'm with you 100%, Rany. I don't want to go through it again. We're going through it. We're going through it because they haven't done that yet. And if they don't do it now, we're just going to watch them what? Watch these guys get a little bit better over the next couple of years and be a 76-win team and then start waving goodbye to them as they walk out the door after free agency. Like, these guys aren't good enough and no one's coming. So if you want somebody else to draft, fine. But move Salvador Perez. For the love of God, he's one of the few things that can bring back somebody who can help the ball club.
I basically agree with what you're saying. Like I said, they're not mutually exclusive. Yes, trade everything of value. I'm the guy who's been saying we should trade Scott Barlow 2 years ago. The guy who said we should trade Whit Merrifield like 5 years ago, right?
And can we agree we're at the trade Brady Singer moment because he's not going to be under contract when they're good again.
Yes, but my concern is he's lost all the value that he had. That is selling Tesla stock after it dropped 70% in 2022, not knowing that it's going to double in the first 5 months of 2023. Like, I don't like the idea of selling low, but if you can get value for anybody, look, you mentioned that the Orioles they got players on their current roster now, this current good team for Jorge Lopez and Dylan Bundy. Jorge Lopez was a reliever with a year and a half left on his contract. And the four guys, I think they got, how many players did they actually get in that trade? They got 4 dudes, which in itself is impressive. But here's the thing. The guy that we're talking about is such a key part of that trade, that is a key part of the 2023 Orioles, is Yennier Cano, right?
Well, the
And
purpose of
nobody
that
knew.
is just it's not to go back and dissect and grade
But my
each
point is
individual
simply,
deal the Orioles made. The point is the Orioles moved on,
yes, but my
and
point
they
is
got
they made a
players
smart
that are
trade.
now part of a team that's winning.
But they made a trade for a player whose value has skyrocketed since he got him. In other words, they properly evaluated and scouted this guy beforehand, which means they had people in their front office capable of doing that. The Royals have made like these small little trades. They traded Jorge Soler to was the Braves for like an A-ball reliever. Has that A-ball reliever seen the light of day? No. Right? Because they picked these guys. They got somebody for Danny Duffy finally after waiting 3 years too
No,
long.
they didn't. I don't even
No.
think they. I think they.
Okay.
I
But
don't even think they got the cash because they only got something if he pitched and he didn't pitch. They got zero.
they
wrote
got a nobody
something in a
player. But my
release
point is
that
when
made it
they
look like it, but they didn't even get the money.
but every year at the deadline, they have traded like relievers who are about to be free agents, but they never pick up the guy who ends up being the surprise of the following season. That is bad scout. Like you before you I mean, yes, you at this point it's too late to bring in a new front office between now and the trading deadline. So yes, they need to trade everything of value on this team now. I hope Salvador Perez has actual value. My concern is, and at least one report I saw, I think it was Ken Rosenthal mentioning what the Royals were considering doing, or maybe it was Jeff Passan. I can't remember at this point. That Salvador Perez was in play, but it almost sounded like he was in play as salary relief for the Royals. That they were looking at him as if they can package him with something else of value in order to get rid of the contract. If you cannot turn Salvador Perez by himself with his contract into a valuable player, then don't trade him. I do not want to have to give up yet more value just to lower the
Agreed.
payroll of this team, right? So, but if
Agreed.
Salvador Perez's value, it's a no freaking brainer. It's a no freaking brainer. Let it. I mean, it's good. Who loses? I mean, yes, we'll all be sad Salvador Perez is gone. Salvador Perez will be sad, but you know what? I'd love to see Salvador Perez play in the playoffs again, play for a winner. He deserves that chance too. Like, is he gonna have that? Is he gonna have that opportunity as a member of the Kansas City Royals? Hell to the freaking no. So if he has value, absolutely trade him. Trade a role to Chapman, of course. Scott Barlow, Taylor Clark has had a pretty
Yeah.
good season. He's got like 3 years left. Who cares? Trade him
But
now. Like, what reliever? You're gonna wait for a reliever to still be valuable in 3 years? Nicky Lopez. Nicky Lopez might have some value for a team that needs, a really good utility player. The last shortstop. He's had kind of a sneaky, he hasn't played a lot, but he's a sneaky 340 OBP and is a really good defensive player at like every infield position. He's got to have some value. There's a lot of guys. Now, the question is, can you trade one of the young guys and get value and not trade low? At this point, I mean, who on this team right now among the young hitters actually has I wouldn't be afraid of trading with their value at their bottom. Nick Prado and maybe Michael Garcia. But you know what? If somebody wants to, if you can get value and you feel like you're going to get something better than what you have now, make that move. I just feel like for the rest of the young players, you have to let it ride. What other choice? Some of these guys, they're young enough. One or two of these guys is going to end up being a good player. I would wish I could say that about all of them. I can't, but I don't know which ones they are. So let them all play. What more do you have to do with the rest of the season? So that's why I say when I burn it all down, to me, it's like, it's not about the players. The players at this point, wind them up and let them go. It's about finding people who can run a front office, finding people who can work in a front office and scout and draft better and find players in Latin America better and spend free agent dollars better. That's what I'm thinking about for the future right now.
Yeah, the deal. Let's talk about the trade deadline part. By the way, we're brought to you by GAN Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. OP08, the Independence League Summit, Shawnee, Blue Springs, Lenexa. Yes, all of it. The entire metro area. GAN Asphalt and Concrete. Your parking lot's a problem? Don't let it be. GAN Asphalt and Concrete's been solving parking lot problems since 1994. Full service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. GAN Asphalt and Concrete, nationally recognized. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. Every project comes with a written warranty. Don't have the first impression your customers get about your business being some parking lot that looks like the surface of the moon, drives even worse. Let GAN Asphalt and Concrete take care of you. Go to GANasphalt.com. I think we touched on this a little bit, but I don't care how many pieces you got to throw together. It's all about what you get back. And I get the idea of and people have said, well, what could you get? What would Olivares get you? So Olivares should go as well. Yes, it's about talent evaluation. I do agree with that. But as long as they hold the job, they've got to evaluate the talent and make a deal. And to me, what they've got to go out and do is, I don't care if you've got to put Nicky Lopez with Salvador Perez and Scott Barlow. Get somebody that matters. And I don't care how far down. That to me is one of their biggest problems is they always are just acting like they're right around the corner. And it's always these fringy AAA guys that are like almost there, like 3A ball guys and a AA ball, or one guy in AA that is the number 26 prospect in baseball. However much you have to put into the basket to get them, they need guys that are the real deal.
And that's why I'm terrified. But that's why I'm terrified that J.J. Piccolo, there was a quote, and I wish if I hadn't spent so much time writing the intro, I would have found this. I would have had the exact quote ready for you. But J.J. Piccolo gave a quote like a week or two ago about trading, the trade deadline, and mentioned the words "close to major league ready." Those words were in his quote, and it's the most frightening thing he said since the start of the season. What on earth are you talking about, JJ? This team isn't close to major league ready. So why the hell are you looking for players who are close to major league ready? I want players who can be starters on a championship ball club. If they can't do that, don't waste my time.
I agree.
The close to major league ready playbook is the Dayton Moore playbook that has worked so wonderfully for the last 8 years. It's brought you nothing. So, the best it's brought you is Edward Olivares. So go out and find me the guy, the 17-year-old kid in Latin America who signed with another team last year that your scouts are being wowed by, the 19-year-old in rookie ball. Instead, you're the one throwing 17-year-olds into trades when you traded Alberto Mondesi for Josh Taylor. It would be incredibly ironic if the Royals end up losing that trade, not because of Alberto Mondesi, but because of the shortstop, the 17-year-old shortstop they threw into that trade. Like, you should never be giving up those guys. Get the lottery tickets. That's your job right now. You're not winning, so get as many lottery tickets as you can.
So, like when it comes to changing in the front office, if they are to make some changes, if JJ Piccolo is going to have the opportunity to do it, I'll give you. Here's a quick litmus test on who stays and who goes. JJ was no doubt in the room draft time in 2019, around where things were. Do you remember the 2019 draft?
I do remember the 2019 draft.
Who went number one?
That was the Adley Rutschman.
Adley Rutschman went number one, and of course, Bobby Witt Jr. went number two. Okay, nothing you could do. You didn't have number one. Although, had you tanked better, and they screwed it up in the last week of the season, you could have had the number one pick.
The Royals would have taken Bobby Witt anyway. That's the problem.
I know, and I agree, and that's my point. You had to have remembered the conversations that went on around that. Who around that room said, we take Bobby Witt Jr. no matter what? Who in that room said, we take Adley Rutschman? Whoever said we take Adley Rutschman, he can keep his job, or at least he survives this round of our evaluation. Whoever said Bobby Witt Jr. is the best player in this draft, he has to go. He has to go. What happened in the second round?
Was that the Brady McConnell pick?
Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, to me, Brady, but putting a guy's job on line because of Bobby Witt isn't the problem. Isn't what I would do. It's the Brady McConnell in the second round. It's the Asa Lacy the following year.
Yeah,
like that's
but just follow. I mean, we don't get to pick our favorites. Like, get it right. I don't want to hear anymore about, well, but Bobby Witt Jr., people liked him. You know what that is? That's cover fire for we in the media. You, Rany, wrote nice things about it. They got it wrong. Anyone who said Bobby Witt Jr. should go over Adley Rutschman got it wrong, horribly wrong, and they should not be listened to on draft day anymore because it's night and day. And I'll tell you something else. Who went 3 picks after Brady McConnell? Who, by the way, what I think has had Tommy John surgery, had mental health issues, which we're all sensitive to, and I wish him nothing but the best. But who went 3 picks in front of him?
In front of him, like the Royals could have picked, or right?
No, they could not have picked.
The beginning. Oh, wait a minute. That was the Orioles had the first pick, right? So they had Adley Rutschman. They took Gunnar Henderson.
They took Gunnar Henderson, who is now 21 years old and has played part of last year and all of this year and has a .345 on base percentage. He was a shortstop coming out like just about everybody is. He's now playing third base, but he can judge what is a strike and what is not a strike.
I was just about to say, I'm glad you brought this up.
So wait a minute. Let me finish my point.
Go ahead and finish.
And so this is my point. They did not have a chance in the second round to take him. He went 3 picks in front, but they did have a chance to discuss him. Mm-hmm. And he got Henderson got $2.3 million in signing. The Royals gave McConnell $2,225,000. Right? It's literally $75,000 difference. Percentage wise. Here is the point. You didn't know where Gunnar Henderson was going to go. Number one, you made and maybe Gunnar Henderson, everybody in the room, we know we're going to hear that stories. Everybody loved Ronald Acuna. They were about to get Ronald Acuna. They were going to get Juan Soto.
Don't forget Juan Soto, both of them. That's right.
They were always right there, just about got them all. You did not get them. You did not do enough. You didn't like them enough. Stop saying their names. Okay? But there would have been a discussion between about the players. And whoever in the room said McConnell is our guy, he goes. Whoever in the room said we should look, they have this new thing. We can trade for these compensation picks. And that one was a second. He was a second. But there were compensation picks, 9 of them in front. And maybe this is what inspired their move for Drew Waters, but somebody should have said, listen, whatever it takes. Henderson, who was the guy who beat on the table and said, he understands what a strike is. He has pop. That guy can stay. That's the kind of evaluation that you're right. They've all been there. And JJ Piccolo should have a scorecard. This guy's been a dumbass 16 times. This guy, we don't listen to this guy enough, but he's made some good calls. This guy wanted Acuna. And that's why I find it, I will join the chorus of change needs to be made if there isn't some kind of change down below, right? If there isn't some kind of change, if JJ Piccolo is not changing scouts or development people, because he's got scorecards, there's enough players, and these guys have all been with him. It should be very easy to know he doesn't get it, he doesn't get it, he doesn't get it, he doesn't get it. And that, I don't care if they're your friends, your job is to build a championship club, and you have to make difficult decisions.
I would go
if
further
those decisions
than that.
aren't made, then I will join everybody. And it's now time to make a change.
I would go further than that. Say, I mean, every organization in baseball, every organization in sports should be poring over their draft results 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years later all the time. Every player you pick, but also every player you didn't pick. And especially the ones who went on to be stars that you passed on. What did we miss? Did we miss something? Who missed on it? Right? Like I've always assumed from the outside that like every organization just naturally goes over their results. I mean, that is your ultimate scorecard every year. It's not the wins and losses and champions. It's the players you picked, right? Because you pick a guy, and 2 or 3 years later you find out, was I right or was I wrong? And the thing is, every single team misses on guys, right? Like a success rate. There's 30 teams out there, so if you get 10% of the talent in a draft, you're doing amazing. So you're going to have mistakes. So there's always room for improvement. And yet it does seem that a lot of organizations are just not self-reflective enough to say, look, we're not judging anyone here. Although if the same person makes mistakes over and over, yeah, maybe it's time for that guy to go. But the point is, You have to figure out who in your organization is good at identifying talent. A good scout is worth his weight in gold. A bad scout needs to find a new line of work. But specifically to Gunnar Henderson, I'm glad you brought him up because I want to make another point, which is Gunnar Henderson, was drafted, like you said, as a shortstop and is now a third base, but a high school shortstop, right? Taken the same year as Bobby Witt, right? He came up late last year. He's still rookie eligible this year, but he came up late last year and hit really well. Actually, hit slightly better than Bobby Witt at a 125 OPS plus, right? He has plate discipline. This year, he started terribly. He was a huge problem at the beginning of the year, even as they were winning. As of May 12th, he was hitting 170 with a 310 slug. But here's the thing. He knows the strike zone, right? And so he pulled out of that. And since May 13th, not counting today when he singled, doubled, homered, and walked against the Royals, since May 13th, he was hitting 301, 346, 589. So now his OPS plus for this year, counting today, is about where it was last year. He's no longer slumping. He's an above average major league hitter. Let me bring up another player who's sort of all the rage this week. Elly De La Cruz. You've heard all about Elly De La Cruz, right?
We'll see him tomorrow.
Maybe right. Number one prospect in the sport, possibly, before he was called up. And he has just put on a show. Can he hit for power? Oh, yeah. Can he run like the wind? Does he have a strong arm? Absolutely. What do all those things, where have we heard those before?
Tools.
Bobby Witt Jr. He has power, speed. He might be the fastest guy in the sport. He has an incredible arm. He was maybe the number one prospect in the sport. He came up last year, opening day, looked good. He has not progressed one whit. Why? Because he doesn't know the strike zone. What was striking about Elly De La Cruz is a guy who did not walk a lot early in his minor league career, but has learned the strike zone. His walk rates have continued to climb. This year, before he was called up, he had 26 walks in 38 games in AAA. In his first major league game, he walked twice. He knows the strike zone, and that means he won't swing at stuff out of the zone. He gets on base with the walk, which allows him to use his speed. And he is already, replaced Bobby Witt Jr. as the power, speed, shortstop. He's got, the StatCast darling, right? Bobby Witt still lights up StatCast, but he's not actually a good player. And so for all we talk about identifying talent, it's not just, we need to replace the scouting and the drafting. It's also the player development. Bobby Witt Jr. should know not to swing at pitches outside the strike zone. And he still isn't good at it. And maybe he's not capable of it. When every single player who comes up has this issue, it starts to make me worry.
Well, I will tell you one of the things I said when they drafted him is I've been playing fantasy baseball back to when his dad pitched. And his dad didn't know the strike zone throwing it. I don't know why you'd think his kid would know it swinging the bat. Listen, who's the number one prospect in baseball right now?
If it's not De La Cruz?
Oh, he's up now.
Right. Oh, gosh. That's a good question. Go ahead. I don't want to start.
No, you don't have to stray far from today's opponent.
From the Orioles?
Yeah.
Oh,
it's Jackson Holiday.
Oh, right. Well, yeah. He's not ready, major league ready. Yeah, no, Jackson Holiday is man, he has a gorgeous stat line, that guy.
But he is 19 years old. He has advanced this year from last year he was rookie ball in low A. This year started in low A, went 396, 522, 660, 14 walks and 13 strikeouts in 67 plate appearances. They bump him up to high A, 333, 470, 561. He walks 32 times, strikes out 34. He's hit 7 home runs collectively in those 2 times.
But let's just stop for a moment. 485 OBP this year. I mean, I've had a discussion. Do you remember what Andrew Jones did in 1996? He was 19 years old, maybe the best prospect in sport, but he started in like low A ball, or maybe it was high. By October, he was hitting home runs in the World Series. Like Jackson Holiday, if the Orioles are serious about, don't be shocked if he's in the major leagues come September. Like this guy he's 19 years old and he's on a rocket ship. But he knows the strike zone.
He knows the strike zone. And oh, by the way, the Orioles made sure they were bad enough to get the number 1 overall pick.
But you know what? Here's the other thing. He was not the consensus.
Yeah, but you know what?
I think it's important because
he's not the consensus. He's not the consensus based upon what we read, what gets out there. But like, I'm so tired of hearing about, because if he's not the consensus, then we're pretty much saying they just got lucky.
I'm not saying they got lucky, but I'm saying Drew Jones. It's incredibly ironic. I just mentioned Andrew Jones. Andrew Jones' son, Drew Jones, was, at least in the months coming up to the draft, most prospect evaluators. Fine, they don't work for major league teams, but we have to get our information.
Probably because noisy people like the Royals were chirping about tools, and the Orioles were.
You might be right. Maybe they were. Maybe those people were saying Drew Jones is the number 1 player in the draft. We're talking to the Royals, which says something about the Royals. But the point is, it wasn't clear cut that Jackson Holliday was the number 1 player in the draft. They got it right. This is my point. Is like, because Drew Jones right now is, I mean, he's been mostly injured, but in 10 games this year, he's at 175. And Jackson Holliday is, just a freaking comet. So the point is you, even if you screw up the pick, you screw up the pick. The Orioles, to their credit, have not screwed up most of their first round picks since they brought in a new general manager from outside the organization. Because remember, they stuck before that too, but they weren't drafting this well.
And I will give Royals fans a ray of hope. There is a different statement being made about who the Royals should be taken. I've had conversations with people. And they have acknowledged, listen, it's not just all about the tools. Tools are great, but tools don't win. And the best player on the team, best hitter on the team, not named Salvador Perez, but all-around skills, you would still say, is Vinny Pasquantino. He's in a slump right now, as we all know. Maybe it's because they're negotiating a contract and he's pressing. I don't know. Whatever it is, they got to figure it out.
I mean, I have to hope that his shoulder has been silently kind of bothering him before he went on the IL.
Except this would be the second year in a row he's had shoulder issues, and it starts to sound chronic to me. So that scares the hell out of me. But, I do believe, I know from the top that they are aware that it has been too. It's one of the reasons why I believe that John Sherman felt that there would be a difference, because the view of Dayton Moore and prospects and talent and what's important is not entirely the same as JJ Picollo. JJ Picollo is aware of the need to understand the strike zone. Does he have the people in place to go find those players? Because as much as it's the GM, if his scouts suck, as you said, a good scout is worth his weight in gold. And if he's got the wrong guys, it's not going to matter, because they're going to bring back, the poor guys. He can go and watch a kid. He goes, oh, there were 2 general managers in the stands with so-and-so. Great. And the guy hits 4 home runs. That makes him the best player in baseball. Or the guy strikes out 4 times. He shouldn't be drafted. Like, it still comes down to the guys that have been there day in, day out. And if they don't have the right people in place, they're screwed. Anyway, they're not going to make the right decision on Jackson Holliday. They'll take Drew Jones if they don't have the right guy. Not that Drew Jones can't go on to be a good player, but Jackson Holliday has been outstanding. And listen, I understand fantasy baseball is not real baseball, but we do a minor league thing where we draft guys, and I got Jackson Holliday with the 4th pick.
Maybe the Royals should hire you.
Well, I know. I'm just saying, these are friends of mine that do baseball, and we do it every year, and we look through all these minors. We don't scout them. We don't watch them play, but we read the people we think are important. So we ought to be fairly good at getting it right. He went 4th, right? Like that speaks to the fact that somebody was looking at something wrong, right? And so it does happen. But the Royals just have way too many wrongs for it to be able. You can excuse away one at a time. All of them together, at the end of the day, you don't get it. You don't know how to draft. That's the bottom line. All right. And anything on the trade front? Hey, this team, this matches up. This is what we want to do.
Well, I mean, I think the big thing is simply that, the Royals' main trade assets are in the pen, right? That the Chapman, Barlow, and like I said, I think Taylor Clark, has been consistent enough for long enough, and he's under club control for long enough that there's going to be some value there. And if they come back and say, well, we need to have some stability in the bullpen, get out of here with that crap. Like, no, you don't. You're going to lose 117 games with or without them, right? When was it Branch Rickey telling Ralph Kiner, that we finished in last with you, we could finish last place without you. You're going to
Yes.
finish in last place with or without any of these guys. So don't give me that crap. So trade them all. So, but ultimately, so we got to look at teams that have a need in the bullpen. And I mean, the one saving grace here is in part because so many teams make the playoffs now, and in part just because of the way the standings work and how like the central divisions are so bad that aside from the Royals, basically every AL and NL Central team, even though they all are under 500, are still in the race. There's only like 4 clear sellers, right, in the trade market. So like this is a seller's market. There are a lot of teams looking for bullpen help, not a lot of teams willing to trade it. So the Royals are in a very good position to move guys. And there are a lot of teams who are in contention, but nevertheless have terrible bullpens. I mean, the Texas Rangers are 41-22. I mean, just on pace for like an all-time great offense, 1,000 runs. They're 23rd in the majors in bullpen ERA. They desperately need some relief help. You know who's even lower than them on the bullpen ERA? I believe they're one rank below them is the Dodgers, which is somewhat shocking. The Dodgers are also like 2.5 games out of first place, and that's kind of important because the NL Central is so weak that the 2 buys that go to first place teams with the new playoff format will almost certainly go to the NL East and NL West. So if you win the division, you get that coveted first round bye. So they have a lot of incentive to make up those 2.5 games. The Dodgers could be a location, right? And Aroldis Chapman is, being left-handed, that makes him even more of a unique commodity. They're going to get value for him, and the sooner they do it, the better. Even if I can't imagine he's holding up a trade, refusing to be traded because there is that rule that he can't be traded without his permission until June 15th. But June 15th is Thursday, so like let's get a move on. And there have been talks that the Royals are telling teams basically you can have him now; it'll cost you more, right? But like they're willing to move him now with the very reasonable supposition that 4 months of a player is more valuable than 2 months of a player. It makes no sense to wait till July 31st if you need a guy. You counteract that with teams getting desperate because the deadline's upon them. But I think, to me, specifically with Chapman, he is such a unique pitcher. There's no one like him out there that a team should be willing to give up a lot for him now and not wait for the deadline. The deadline for them isn't, July 31st. The deadline for them is Aroldis Chapman got traded to somebody else because there's no other Aroldis Chapman. Barlow, I could see you wait. He's a very good reliever. He's also under contract for another year, so you're not losing much value by waiting. But I think the incentive to trade him sooner is not there. But of course, you also have the option of trading them together in a big package to get a top 100 prospect. Could you completely revamp a contender's bullpen? The Rangers have that pitcher Brock Porter, who was their 4th round pick last year, but was considered the best high school pitcher in the draft, basically. And people thought he was just going to go to college. They saved enough money by taking Kumar Rocker with their first pick. They gave him like $4 million. And he ranked as a top 100 prospect before the season, even though he was a 4th round pick out of high school. And in 30 innings this year, I think he's given up 13 hits. He's walked 17, ball control issues, but struck out over a batter an inning. He was old for his draft class. He's actually like 2 weeks older than Frank Mazzucato, even though he's drafted the year after. But like you pair him with Mazzucato, and now the Royals have 2 guys who are about to turn 20 who have top of the rotation potential.
They both have big time swing and miss stuff, and neither one of them can consistently find the plate at a low level. Right. But it sounds like a classic Royal maneuver.
But at the same time, we'd rather have the guy far away from the major leagues, right? Who might be a bust, but if he gets that command, could actually be a difference maker. That would be an example of a guy. I don't know if you could get him. For one, maybe you get him for both. If you can package them and get one elite guy, I think you have to do that. But if not, then you should be able to get, if not a top 100 guy, it's certainly a top 150 guy for Aroldis Chapman. I think Chapman's going to be a difference maker in this trade market.
Yeah, I do too. I think teams are going to be hot after him, and I think it's going to be. But I still think they're going to have to put more in with it. I'm with you. Somebody needs bullpen help, then Barlow and Chapman together. I mean, because they have to bring back either a high quantity, 3 or 4 high-end upside guys, or they've got to bring back one sure thing.
Right.
And, so take your pick and start, you're not getting Jackson Holiday. right? So start going down the list of the Milwaukee Brewers. Jackson Chourio is a toolsy outfielder.
Yeah, you're not. I don't know if you're getting Jackson Chourio. Like that's top 20 type prospect.
But and I'm with you. But you call and you
sure.
ask, what do you need? What would it take? And if they say nothing, then you make an offer you say, hey, this puts the division is yours if you make this deal. And then you go on down the list. You start making your way through all the top prospects until then you get down and say, okay, now we need multiple guys that are high end. That's how this should work.
You want to hear the high end guy? I still don't think. I think the Dodgers are way too well run to do this, but who knows? Andy Pages, I believe that's how you pronounce his last name, who top 100, clear top 100, maybe even top half of the 100 prospect guy. He was ranked 81st coming into the season, but got off to a monster start in AA this year. But last week, I think he dove for a ball, tore up his shoulder. He's an outfielder, but an elite potential prospect. So he's out for the year. Could you could you get a little bit of a discount on that and get him from the Dodgers for one or both of these guys? The Royals definitely could use, all the outfielders and get their hands on. He's 22 years old. I believe he was actually signed out of Cuba. But this is a top 100 prospect guy, clear. And if he's healthy next year, you can wait on him. What do you care? That's the sort of guy I think you get. You're not going to get the Jackson Churios of the world, but could you get Andy Pages? Yes, maybe you could.
Oh, here, 18-year-old outfielder Josu DePaula from the Dodgers. Right? Like, just obviously
you can throw a dart at the Dodgers organization. And that's the thing. Maybe you can get 2 or 3 of those guys. Maybe you don't get 5, maybe you get 2 or 3.
I'm looking at a list and he's like 88, but he's 18 years old. Okay. Get him and another guy with upside out of the deal. Like those are the things that they need to be doing. Before we get out of here, Randy, the minor league minutes. You're gonna finish with a smile on everybody's face.
It seems kind of anticlimactic after all this, but you know what, we put in the time here. We clock in, we clock out. We do a day's wages for a day's work. I don't know if we're making a day's wages here, but a day's work regardless. So we're going to finish with the minor league minute. I'm going to bring attention, try to find something positive. I am going to bring up, and it kind of fits in with what we're talking about here, the name of Austin Charles. For those of you who do not know, Austin Charles was the Royals' 20th round pick, well, final pick last year, but not final in terms of talent. He was a guy that two-way player in high school. He's listed at 6'4" and 215. Great arm on the mound, but also big time power potential as a shortstop. And was frankly, not expected to sign. And the Royals, to their credit, found enough money in their draft budget. They allotted their money well. I think he got something like $450,000. It wasn't huge money. It was like 4th or 5th round money, but he took it. He signed. He played very briefly in rookie ball last year. And then this year, he was in extended spring training. He's 19 years old, but he was, by all reports, raking in extended spring training. Now, we don't have stats for that. I can't give you exact numbers. And I was skeptical myself. And I'm like, well, if he's really playing that well, then why aren't we seeing him in A-ball? But then the rookie ball season actually started last week, I want to say. I think it was actually Monday. And he went to rookie ball and played 2 games, in which he had 5 hits, including a double, triple, and a homer, and then they promoted him to A-ball. So he's 19 years old. He's a shortstop, and he's made it to full season ball. That in itself is an accomplishment. He's 1 for 10 in Colombia right now with 3 strikeouts. He has yet to walk as a pro in 8 games because he's a Royal. But he was batting third today. He was batting third in Colombia's lineup as a 19-year-old, shortstop. I think he DH'd today, but he is mostly a shortstop. Although there is talk he may move to third base now because Daniel Vasquez is the he's a legitimate prospect who plays shortstop at Colombia. So, but even at third base, Austin Charles is a guy. That's the sort of guy that I want to see the Royals, take chances on. You take a chance on a draft pick late, but you find the money, and you get a 3rd round, maybe even a 2nd round talent with your very last pick. The Royals sort of did that the year before with Luka Tresh, who is taking a step backwards like everyone else in the organization, but still probably has a future of some sort. It's a major league backup catcher. They got him in the 17th round. They got Austin Charles in the 20th round. And you talk about tools. The guy's got tools for days. Let's see if he can learn the strike zone, because nothing else matters if you don't know balls from the strike. But Austin Charles is a name I want to keep an eye on.
Yeah. All right, we'll do it. Rany, thank you for the very passionate plea at the beginning of everything, and for all the time and energy that you still put into the Royals ball club. Hopefully, we're going to see a very fruitful trade deadline, and we'll say, okay, that's progress, right? That's what a good draft would be nice. Let's see them ace the draft. That would be very nice. We've got a couple of things to at least look ahead to. I don't know if we look forward to it, but we'll look ahead to it. That is Rany Jazayerli. I am Soren Petro. Of course, we are brought to you by GAN Asphalt and Concrete. Every project comes with a written warranty, free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews. They've been making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. You can find them online at ganasphalt.com or call 816-484-3338 if your business needs help in the parking lot. Whatever it is, they do it all, full service. It's GAN Asphalt and Concrete, online at ganasphalt.com. So hit us up with the like, the love button, the subscribe button. Make sure you share the podcast with your friends. For Rany Jazayerli, I'm Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on Kaufman Corner.